Kopitiam Conversations.
All right. So since you mentioned about the golden age, so I think it's probably a good time to bring this question up now, right? So the 1960s to the late 1980s were regarded as the golden age of advertising, and of course, this has been a subject of popular TV series like you mentioned earlier, Mad Men, and of course, I think the protagonist for Bewitched was also an
Yes.
advertising
An account guy.
Yeah. So obviously there was a certain coolness factor associated with being in the advertising industry. I mean, it must be cool enough to make it to TV like policeman or I mean, sorry you guys who are accountants. Accountants almost never make it on on movies or on TV series. Sorry you guys, all right? Yeah. So obviously there was a coolness factor associated with the advertising industry.
Yes.
It was creative, it was cool, it was out there. So you were definitely working in the industry around this time, right? I mean, you started in the 60s, probably not.
I started in the 80s, and we were still in the golden age, yes.
So what was it like in the golden age, and how was that different compared to right now?
Okay, there's a vast difference, but the first thing I will tell you was you would make a lot of money. The clients, you see, first media rates were much lower, so it took much less money to get yourself visible on TV. The media scene was much less not so complicated. You weren't able to target so accurately as you would for social media now.
Right.
But then you would have TV, you would have print, which included newspapers and magazine. You would have outdoor, you would have radio, and maybe you would have some promotion. And basically that was it. So you cut your teeth on writing for print advertising, and the most important thing then in the golden age was with a 15% commission of the media budget that you would be spending for your client, the commission of 15% that you got from the media owners, you would actually be able to turn a great profit. So for every 1 ringgit we spent for the client, the media gave us back 15 cents. So if you have a budget of ₦1,000,000 ringgit which you are spending with the client, for the client, you are getting back 150,000. But that does not include all the special rates which you negotiate for the client, and so you make even more money on the back end. And then there was for third-party costs, for fees and for production, you would charge them a commission of 17.65 on third-party costs. It was a markup. 17.65 is a reciprocal of 1/15, and you'd get 17.65. So then you'd also be able to mark up when you produce radio commercials, TV commercials for your clients, when you produce printing films for your clients, when you produce billboards for your clients, you would also make money from the production. So it was, I remember Ogilvy was it had a turnover of about 44 million when I joined it, and they were making huge profits, and they were paying us great bonuses, and the salaries were very competitive. The directors were driving Mercedes-Benzes as company cars. It was a good business. Margins weren't so squeezed. They weren't so tight, and they were very generous with us. They would sell us, they would buy beer, Anchor beer, and they sell it to us in the gallery. For 80 cents a can, which you can't even buy a can of Coke now,
Hold on. So the cigarettes were free and the alcohol was basically
very cheap.
Very cheap.
Yes.
I can see where this is going.
Well, you see, at the end of a day, there was a place where we'd all be able to relax. There were dartboards. It was like a little pub. It was called the Gallery, and we would be able to take beer from the fridge, and we just signed for it. I remember in my first month there, I signed away my whole salary. At the end of the month, I had no salary. I said, "What happened?" "Oh, your beer consumption was this much." So then I realized, oh, I see. But we also could pay. So the better one was to pay in cash, you see. So you give the tea lady or the bar lady who's in charge there, you say, "Okay, I'm giving you 10 ringgit, and after that, don't take any more money from me, because I might overspend."
Keep to a budget,
Yes, keep to a budget. So the golden age of advertising was basically one, it was very profitable. Two, it was about the quality of the work and the quality of the people. There was an amazing quality of people who were in advertising. These were people from all different walks of life, and they cut their teeth and they learned on the job. But we had great teachers. We had great foreign creative directors who were here to teach, who were here to develop local talent. Yeah.
Okay.
And also there were another part of the golden age was we had amazing clients who, as I said earlier, were gutsy, who would buy stuff, who would say, no, I don't want stuff that is really ordinary. Show me something that was outstanding,
Right.
give me something that, people will remember, which I will be proud of to talk about in my club, So it would be things like that they would push you, and that made the age golden. Another thing was, it was the kind of people that the industry attracted. They attracted, how would I say, people who were articulate. They attracted a lot of women who otherwise would have been teachers or nurses.
Right.
And these people who finished their teacher training came out and said, no, I'm not going to teach. They taught for a couple of years, and then they found that they were English literature graduates, and they wrote and they spoke very well. And I worked with so many of these. Many of these later became creative directors. And there was one who was in particular a good mentor. She was a nurse, and she taught me a lot in terms of infant formula advertising, because she was a mother. So there were different kinds of people, and they didn't keep their opinions to themselves. If you went to work looking tired, they would actually ask you, what did you do last night? Why are you so tired? And then, of course, there were standards. Standards were very high. In the 80s, you would... I started not as a writer. I started as an account management trainee. So you were expected to wear ties and long sleeve shirts and to see your clients. And at that time...
Suits, that's what they call it,
Yeah, we were called suits, So I remember we had a British managing director who would about 5 o'clock walk around the office and chat with people. And one day, after an extremely long afternoon of meetings, I came back and I was writing call reports, contact reports, and I was writing job requisitions and job sheets so that they could be sent out the next morning, so that the secretary could type them and send them out the next morning. I remember it was rather stuffy. The aircon had gone off, so I had undone my tie and my collar was open, and I had folded up my sleeves. He walked by with his pipe, and then he doubled back and he says, Lawrence. I said, yes, Roger, how are you? Oh, I'm good, but this is not your country club. We expect certain standards to be maintained. And he just walked away. And everybody else looked at me and they said, your tie, your cuffs, button it. I noticed nobody unbuttoned their ties or their cuffs until they left the office.
Well, despite the aircon being broken down.
Yeah, so later we grumbled and we said it was not broken down, but at 5 the aircon will go off. The building maintenance will shut it.
Okay.
So
right.
So then they installed those other independent units so that and there were fans, so it was a little bit more bearable. Some of us had to work longer hours, you see. And of course, also one more thing was, in those days when you had multinational advertising in the golden age, they respected a work-life balance. If you went home, I remember one managing director, there was a guy who would always continuously go home very late, and then he would be walking around the office and he would be carrying loads of stuff. And one day the MD saw him, hey, how are you? And he says, oh, I'm so busy. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I'm going home. And I'm going home late every day. So he expected some sympathy from the MD. And this classic British MD said,
oh boy.
Well, one of two things must be happening. Either your account director is overloading you with work and you have too much on your plate, which I don't think is true, or maybe you are just bloody inefficient. And he walked away. And I was within earshot and I went, oh shit, So you had men of character and they wouldn't mince words. And the advertising industry was like that. There were very many nice people, and there were also people who would whip you into shape. If they saw potential, they wouldn't take rubbish from you, and they would say, look, they tell you, you have a lot of potential, but don't become one of those, divas or prima donnas. Just knuckle down and do the work and produce.
Not tactful answers, but truthful ones.
Yeah. Like the guy in Mad Men, I remember his name now, Don Draper. Yeah,
Don Draper,
he never minced words. Yeah, Don Draper didn't mince words. And that series, when I watched it, I thought, well, it is a very, very, how would I say, faithful reproduction of what the golden age was. And some of it was not faithful to time. That was in the 60s and 70s. And in the 80s, we were still doing things like that. And then when I checked, they said, no, they actually advanced a lot of things because the way certain visuals were produced and certain markers were used, and they were using overlays and stuff like that. We only started using overlays in the late 70s and early 80s. Otherwise, they would hand draw the visuals differently. So I remember, I thought, well, it's the way I remember advertising to be. You know, they would talk about the billing. You see, another reason why the golden age of advertising has died and is very different from now is at the turn of the millennium, in the late 90s and about 2000, the large advertising firms and groups started to unbundle. Unbundle means they started to carve out the media departments that were planning and buying with huge budgets, and they developed them into separate media agencies that would buy media. You know, you would have Media Edge, you would have the Havas Group, your Karat Media, and so on. So these people would then become media independents, and the creative agency was left with just fees, which their clients would pay. They would negotiate a fee payment system. And in Malaysia, I worked with Khairuddin, the CEO of who was then the MD of Lowe Lintas, and I was the MD of another agency, and we worked on a fee structure for agencies. That was the death knell of agencies, because we were just making just enough plus a little bit for profit. Whereas when you had the media at your disposal, when you were buying the media, you made the commission too.
Commissions, yeah.
So they unbundled that, and we lost our commissions overnight. Although as an agency, I have, let's say, Nestle, and I go to Mindshare, and Mindshare is an Ogilvy concern too. It has got the same parent owner. But at the same time, they would give us back only a minimal. When we would make 15%, now they are giving us back 3%. For introducing Ogilvy to them. And of course, now creative agencies depend on fees, and even digital agencies depend on fees, and it's also sometimes performance-based, and the margins are extremely thin. So this is really something which they should never have unbundled. And well, I mean, if you were to ask me, I've answered what made the golden age great, and the decline was basically one. Advertising became a commodity. Clients became very conservative because the one group of people, they realized, I'm paying fees to these people, so I must make sure I'm going to get as much as I can from these people. And when they did squeeze, the agencies would say, okay, we give them a safe campaign, but we also give them something that's quite amazing. But something that was quite amazing took time. And time was money. We would bill based on time, you see. So, have you noticed the decline in the standard of advertising today? Terrible. And all of it is a function of money. So, it was basically agencies now, the creative agencies and even the digital agencies are not being remunerated fairly. And because they're not being paid fairly, they're finding it hard to employ good people, or they're finding it hard to produce quality work simply because they don't have the people to do it. They don't have the talent, and good talent takes a lot of money to hire and to keep, you see. So they don't have that. And of course, it is the media agencies are still making the money. And the strange thing is, what has happened is the media agencies are now starting up their own creative departments to start servicing their clients and create campaigns for the clients. So they've gone a full circle. And what I predict,
unbundle and rebundle again.
I think there will be a rebundling again. There will be a rebundling. And this time, I think the biggest losers will be the creative agencies. Through no fault of theirs, they were unbundled, and now the WPP group, the Havas group, the Publicis group, they're all looking at this is not working. So why don't we put them all together again? And I think if they had left well alone, if they had left good alone, it would have remained, and the industry would have grown stronger. So basically, that was what caused the decline, and
So that's the number one, the unbundling of the media agency. So the media became its own agency, which basically killed the goose that laid the golden egg on one hand.
Correct. Something like that. Yes.
Something like that. And then on the other hand, it's also the clients are getting more, concerned about their ROIs.
Yes. Correct. Correct. Advertising was measurable even then, but it was measurable and there was a large margin of error. Now it is even more measurable by the number of people you can actually reach, and by the number of sales that you have, by the number of leads you generate, by the number of inquiries that you have, and so on. These are all KPIs which agencies have been set before. So that's why in the golden age, the founder of the Unilever Group, Abraham, said, 50% of my advertising budget is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which 50% is wasted.
Right. Okay. Wow.
He was true. Yeah.
Wow. Sounds hedonistic back in those days. So the question
I wouldn't say it was. Yeah. Sure. Go ahead.
So my question was, with the free cigarettes and the dirt cheap alcohol. So was it wine, women, and song all back then? I mean, we have advertising that was, by today's standards, you would probably consider it sexist and all, right?
Okay, it was not wine. It was not all wine, women, and song. It was work, and then wine, pass out, and then would work again. Deadlines were sacred. We were given good deadlines, and we had to respect those deadlines. We had to meet those deadlines. And if we started it late, then we'd have the whole studio and everybody going into overtime. But the risk of going into overtime was you would have to pass that extra cost to the client, and the account director would have to approve the overtime. The overtime would only be approved if you had a good reason. If you start late and you say that you are overloaded, then I think you would have to clear it with your creative director. So there was some SOPs you had to follow in order to make sure that your overtime was justified. Therefore, you have to respect your deadlines and plan your work. Secondly, yes, of course, I do not know why the affinity of advertising people to smoke was very, very high. And of course, maybe because cigarettes were free, but even in the non-tobacco agencies, the cigarettes were still, people were still smoking. And we after work, it was like the norm. It was like as if you're working in the UK. After work, you'd go across the street to a pub for a drink. Or you'd go downstairs, when I was in Grey, we'd go downstairs, 37 floors down to the street level, and there was out of Africa, and we would have a drink there, or a few drinks,
A favorite watering hole,
Yes, correct. So it was always usually like that, and because I think the pressure was very great, and I think the stress was very great. So what we would do is we would just sit there and we wouldn't talk about clients. We would talk about everything else. We talk about football. We talk about our favorite movie, or we would talk about all kinds of things. Or maybe we'd bitch about a client, But that was it, That we never really talked about. Hey, have you seen this, or do you know that? We don't, we talk about, we gossip about other people in other agencies and who's having an affair with who, that kind of thing. But that was basically it. So it was not all women and song. We always made sure that in order to enjoy what we wanted to enjoy in leisure, we really worked for it. We worked really very, very hard.
Work hard, play hard, and the rest probably the passing out. Not being able to remember.
Yes, correct.
Exciting times, right? At a time when I think it was the 80s, and I still remember vividly, tobacco and alcohol advertising were in the cinemas, were on magazines. I think,
yes.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I remember that Guinness Stout advertisement on television as well. Yeah.
yes. And it went, Guinness Stout is good for you.
I remember that one. Yeah. Oh, I was young then, and I was looking at Guinness Stout advertisement. Right. Yeah. So obviously there were a lot of money for these campaigns and all that. So which were the brands you actually have worked for? The tobacco and alcohol companies. Which campaigns you actually worked for?
Well, I didn't have the honor of working for these big brands, but we had the Malaysian Tobacco Company, and they paid us a lot of money to do what we call development work. I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. We had to work in an enclosed room, and we were developing a new brand for them, or new brands for them, and we would look at these how would I say, these, as you called, non-cigarette advertising vehicles, because at that point already we could not develop, we could not use the brand by itself. We had to diversify the brand into another thing. Like John Player was a cigarette, the John Player special, but then they went into motor racing, all right? And then later when they downgraded the brand, they talked about, I do not know about, they had Mementos, and Dunhill used to have pens and cufflinks and shirts and stuff like that, style, quality, excellence. And then Salem used to have Salem Country Travel. There was Peter Stuyvesant Travel, So, and then there was Marlborough High Country, that kind of thing. So these were all, I worked on a brand called Sterling, which never took off. And we were supposed to develop a whole range of, silver and sterling silver sort of jewelry for men and, pens and stuff like that. Dunhill beat us to it, so they stopped it, but they paid the agency well. They paid the agency for development work, a couple of 100,000 every month just for doing the development work like that, and I would have to work on it 3 days a week kind of thing. So it was interesting. But I did work on a fair bit of alcohol advertising. I used to write for what you call the Deinhardt Green Label. It was a nice leaf from it. It was a German wine, Jules Sabaran. And then I would write for Johnny Walker, the whole Johnny Walker range from the green label to the blue label to the black label to the red label, And then, of course, there was a brandy called Courvoisier. And then there was a champagne called... I forget, it was a French, Le Grand Dame. And it was so we would create advertising for that. Most of that was all in print, because at that point, the people who were, wine drinkers and whiskey drinkers still had the time to read the newspapers. And, they would sit there and they would read the papers. Yeah, so alcohol advertising, aside from beer, was very, very interesting, because you had to borrow a lot of imagery and you had to understand the drinker's mindset. And he didn't drink to get drunk. He drank because he liked the taste. He drank Black Label because he could afford it. He drank. It's like, I've worked so hard, and Black Label is my reward, as is my Mercedes Benz, as is my Rolex watch, that kind of thing.
Symbol of success.
Symbol of success, a lot of snob appeal. And I believe that you had to have a certain kind of distinctive ability to understand this target audience in order to write. It was not just booze. It was not just a promotion girls making you drink, because only now whiskey is very popular. It used to be brandy then, before red wine. And I remember taking this, what was his name? He was basically the third or fourth generation of the people who own the Martell brand. And he was aghast, this Frenchman. He was the successor, the heir apparent to the Martell Empire in France. And we took him to these nightclubs and restaurants to show him how people would drink brandy in Malaysia. And he says, I'm shocked at the way they murder my drink. But I am, again, not complaining, because they are drinking so much of it.
It's still money.
So, it is money. It is just that I would like to shut my eyes tonight and not remember how they drink how they murder my brandy, as he said. So he was. They were interesting people you meet. So basically, yes. Cigarette advertising, by the time we reached the 90s, was already dying. And they were going into all sorts of dark marketing. They were going into functions and events and motor racing, and they were diversifying everything. By the late 90s, there was practically nothing left. The tobacco lobby was squeezed against the wall. Then, of course, about alcohol advertising. We became more and more Islamic, and papers refused to accept. They would, but they would be very careful. You couldn't show people drinking. You could only show the product. You could tell a story of the product, but you couldn't do anything else. So it became very restrictive, very, very restrictive. So basically, these things, the clients moved their marketing budgets into promotions and pushing the product on site rather than spending it on building the brand.
So they got all these promoters all coming up to you in the pubs and all. More push strategy like that way, right?
Yes, correct. You're right.
Okay. So what were some of the best campaigns that you actually have worked for?
Well,
That
it's
really
I have
stood
to
out
have a
for
very
you.
long. Well, I did a lot at one time when I was writing. I was in Lowe Lintas. We had the BMW account. I was doing a lot of writing for BMW, and the campaigns I wrote for BMW
Right.
stood out. It built the brand then to what it is today. You know, I also did a fair bit of work for. I would be. Many people would not be proud to say it, but I was very proud to say that I did a lot of work for detergent advertising. And we created local brands that were very unique and very different. And also, I did in the early 2000s. I worked on brand. I actually built up when the client bought the 7-Eleven chain from the Taiwanese.
Right.
We created advertising, and they began to go on what you call that, an opening spree where they opened many different branches, and we did an amazing radio campaign for them. I also worked on, how would I say, I won some awards, I think, for Lee and Perrin sauce. I won some awards for Carrier air conditioning, print ads. I won some awards for Vicks, the inhalers, those were the Ogilvy days and the Wings days. Even Caterpillar tractors were award-winning advertising, which I had done. And so it was not so much the awards that I won that were satisfying. It was the brands that were very pedestrian, that were very very Me Too, and you're able to create market share for that brand, and you are also able to help it get a certain kind of position in the market. And that was fantastic. I remember after looking at Fernleaf Milk, we did a campaign giving mothers a pat on the back because we found a key insight that mothers needed affirmation about what they were doing was right. And we did a campaign for them, and the brand from nowhere became the best-selling brand after 7 months of advertising. Milk powder brand. That is what clients pay us for. Not so much to win awards, but to create market share for them and to put their brands on the map. And I always tell young creatives, it's not about winning the awards. You have to do work. But yes, award-winning work is good, but in the first instance, you are paid to actually do something to help increase your client's market share, and to increase his brand recognition, and to increase what that brand is all about to the consumer.
All right. Yeah, obviously have to think about making your brand memorable, getting stuck in the consciousness and top of mind. Yep.
Correct.
Right. I noticed that you couldn't remember whether you won an award or not. That must have been the alcohol, Lawrence.
Oh, talking about that, I think I also won an award for some of the Johnny Walker stuff that I did. The Johnny Walker print campaign, the Black Label print campaign. I took the saying from Confucius: "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step." Presenting the Johnny Walker whatever collection, I used to play with the word step. So I remember vaguely those things, but awards didn't mean much to me. I'm of the school that after in Ogilvy, it's not about awards, it's about doing what you can for the brand to put it on the map. And then from there I joined Lowe Lintas, which was the same. So it was not much of a cultural shock. But when I joined Wings Creative, it was then owned by the late Tan Sri Lim Kok Wing. I was in cultural shock. It was all about winning awards, and it was working 24/7. I only took a year of that. I only could take a year of that before I nearly burnt out, and I had to leave. To safeguard my own sanity.
All right. Okay. So based on that, based on what you have said, all right, and looking at where we are now, and what's going to happen in the immediate future. Okay, so how do you see the advertising industry now? Of course, with digitization, all right, disintermediation and things like that happening. Okay, how do you see the advertising industry in the near future? Say maybe 5 or 10 years down the road.
The fundamentals probably don't change. Everything is still dependent on an idea. Your clients pay us to create ideas for them, ideas that work, ideas that generate sales, ideas that build a brand's franchise, that build a brand's presence in the market. And that is the sole reason for the existence of any advertising, to build a brand. And to build that brand, you use ideas. So that doesn't change. The way we do it will change. The platforms we use have changed. Yeah. From the time I was in advertising till now, the platforms have changed. Print is almost dead. Yeah. And when you talk about a TV commercial, you talk about the commercial or the video being aired first on YouTube or Google Ads and in Facebook rather than on free-to-air TV or on what you call this cable TV or satellite TV like Astro. So you see the platforms may have changed, but in creating a video for a brand, in creating advertising for a brand, you still need an idea. So that doesn't change. What has happened is the delivery methods will change. The food, the content does not change. The recipe behind that content will be even more advanced and it will be even more tasty, but the delivery of the food to you like we have now changes, but the food in itself doesn't change.
Right.
Yeah. So the same thing goes for even media planning. It is about making sure that the brand stands out. It is making sure that you have enough reach. It is making sure that you reach the targets. But nowadays, it's not about just, we're looking at this segment of the demographic and that's it. You're looking at a demographic which can be further funneled down into a specific age group so that you can get leads, Right. So, or you can actually generate some form of sales from these people. And that becomes the difference, yeah? But if you want to ask me to tell you the whole picture, I think the industry will recover after this stronger. And I would like to predict, if you were to ask me one thing, I would like to predict that I think we are going to be rebundling. Because media agencies are already having their own promotion teams and their creative teams doing advertising devoid of the creative agencies.
Right.
You see, the media agencies actually then pick up a client that has got no creative agency and they say, we'll give you the creative free of charge, exactly like how an old school agency would before the unbundling. I give you the creative for free. I will only charge you third-party costs if I need to shoot the commercial for you, if I need to create the print ad for you, yes. If I need to do photography for you, yes. But the creative service is free because you're paying me a commission. You see?
And this comes about by also,
Yes.
Sorry. And this comes about by also the conglomeration of all the media companies and all that, right? Where they can provide full service for that one client across the world. Yeah.
Correct. For example, Mindshare services Nestle all around the world. And I'm not sure which agency services Unilever around the world. So they can do it, but it's basically not so much these large media agencies that are actually rebundling. It is the large local media agencies. Like there's an agency called Draper. Draper Media used to have its own creative arm 10-12 years ago when I was working with them, So it is basically these people coming together and saying, look, I'm going back the way it used to be, to the way it used to be. Because, when you deliver 40, 50, 60 million ringgit worth of clients' advertising budget to the media owners, and you are making a base of 15%, that's just the base. That's a lot of money. But, when I used to run an ad agency called Inter-Pacific, and we still had, before we unbundled, I was making a gross margin, a gross commission of 29%. Because of the special discounts I would get for the clients, and we were doing very, very well. And when we had to unbundle, my margin went down to 10%. And I thought that's the death knell of most advertising agencies. It would be very tough to turn a profit. It was tough to employ good talent. So I see the advertising industry in the near future. Let's say 5 years from now, you would see many media outfits, media specialists offering you creative services. And it's going to make it harder and harder for the creative agencies to, do business. And they've got to reinvent themselves now. They've got to very urgently look at their business model. And I think they've got to realize it doesn't work. They cannot depend on fees alone. Get rid of the fee model, go back to a bundled model. And I think that is going to be the key. But then you're going to be leaving a lot of people unemployed. Because the media agencies are very dynamic. The media
Right.
agencies are not like, they're not dinosaurs, you know. They actually think about promotions. They actually think about a pull factor for the client.
Right.
And if the creative campaign, the brand building campaign doesn't work, they look at on-ground activation. They look at how they actually can push, you know, sales. And the creative agencies think it's below them to think of things like that.
Right.
They somehow over the years they become very spoiled. You know, unlike when I used to work at Ogilvy, when we do a campaign, you think about the promotions, you think about the direct marketing, you think about the public relations, you think about every aspect of it, and then you come out with an integrated campaign. I learned this integration when I was with Gray. I worked on the telecom business. Oh yes, won a lot of awards for Telecom Malaysia. When I worked on the telecom business, we used to have to think about everything from mainstream advertising to the promotional strategy to the direct marketing. We used to do
Right.
mailers, DMs. We used to do how would we tackle this? How would this idea be executed in terms of the public relations campaign? So as a joint creative director, you would be able to have to talk to all the divisions to be able to tell
Right.
them how to apply it. You see, and we made a lot of money. You know, not just from just the commissions, but the telecom paid us fees for PR, for promotions, for direct marketing, and that one idea drove everything.
Right.
So I think that should be the way it is going. It has to go again. And the clients are very, very annoyed because they have to deal with so many people. Previously, it was one point of contact, one person in the agency, and that was it. Now you've got to deal with the promotions person, you've got to deal with the digital agency, you deal with the media agency, you've got to deal with everybody. So the clients' cost, time, and efficiencies, everything has increased, and the efficiency has gone down. You see? So,
okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for sharing your experience and also your expertise in the area of advertising. All right.
Thank you.
So, thank you.